Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Northpointe Plus. I am joined by not Chris Carter.
Ooh, can I get that on a card or a t-shirt?
Yeah, I'm going to put it on the little bumper in the bottom.
Not Chris Carter.
Not Chris Carter. That's your official title. Henceforth, we're changing it on the website. Every time you do announcements, that's going up on the slides.
Not Chris Carter. I like it.
Not Chris Carter.
I like it.
Chris isn't feeling too well, so we got the next best thing. Not Chris Carter. Thanks for coming in.
Next best thing feels like an honor too. Wow.
It is. It should feel like a compliment.
Yeah. Put that on the back of the t-shirt. Yeah.
For those of you that are unfamiliar, this is our follow-up podcast to Sunday mornings. We have our gatherings, and then this podcast lets us dig into a bunch of questions, continue the conversations, and just talk about mostly nonsense. And hopefully it's a little bit beneficial for the people that are watching.
Just a little.
If not, maybe entertaining.
Yeah, there you go.
If not that, maybe a time waster.
Yeah. This is
Trying
like
to set
the
the bar.
good thing to watch during lunch when you got nothing else going on is kind of what we're going for.
Yeah, keep it on in the background if you're cleaning or whatever it might be. I'm setting the bar real low for 2022.
Sneaking in. Yeah.
Oh, man. But we kicked off a new series this week called Let Me Think, and Chris kicked that off.
Yeah.
So normally I would ask Chris to explain that.
No.
Do you have any explanation for this new series that we're doing?
I was like most people, and I watched from home. I know the weather was bad, and we had like a lot more people watching online, which is great. We love that we have that capability, quality online content now. But yeah, I had the day off. So I was watching from home with two screaming children, learning about Proverbs and things like that, like everybody else.
Yeah.
Which was great.
Which was great. Yeah, that's awesome. Yep. So we're in this new series where we're going through Proverbs for the next 2 months. We're inviting everyone to read through a proverb a day. It's really easy to catch up. You don't even really need to catch up.
Nope.
So this podcast comes out on January 4. So if you wanted to start then, read Proverbs 4.
Boom.
If you miss a few Proverbs and you want to read again on January 8, read Proverbs 8. If you're wired like me and that would literally destroy you to skip, then yeah, you might need to carve out some time in your day to catch up. That's okay. There's space for people like me.
Yeah, I mean, there is.
We'll make it through somehow by the grace of God.
Stress reading through Proverbs.
That's how we're supposed to read the Bible. That's the freedom of Jesus.
There it is.
That's how it works.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
But we're really talking about wisdom. Proverbs talks about that in the intro. Solomon talks about wanting to pass on wisdom from a father to a son. These are sayings of wisdom. So Chris did a great job unpacking all of that, and we get to botch all of it as we answer questions.
Sorry, Chris, for everything that's about to happen here.
We love you. Feel better soon. This is what happens when you get sick.
Yeah. He'll learn. Maybe.
Probably not. He'll enjoy it. He'll enjoy it. We won't. That's fine.
We have questions.
We did get a bunch of questions.
All right.
So I just want to we'll go through these and we will attempt to be as Chris as possible as we answer them. So the first question is a hopefully a softball. I guess it depends on how you might take it.
You just made it. It's gonna be like a 10-minute answer now because you said that. That's how that happens.
Oh man, if it's 10 minutes, we're starting over. We're just gonna start over and re-record. The first question comes in and talks about this idea of wisdom. Mm-hmm. What are one or two things that have helped you develop wisdom over the years of your life?
Nice.
So you can pick one thing or two things, maybe even three things.
Yeah. Help develop wisdom. One is experience, right? Like experience is one of the greatest teachers of all time.
Experience is a harsh teacher.
So hard, right? Pain teaches lots of lessons, that's for
Certainly
sure.
does.
So does joy, but pain really settles it in. So I would say experience is one. And then I would say stories, other people's stories.
Yep.
I love hearing stories. And so I think part of a big principle in wisdom is if you can learn it from somebody else's experiences, you don't have to experience that pain.
Yes.
Wow. That's a great
It's
thing.
super nice.
Yeah. So that's the two I'm stealing. I don't know what you're coming up with, but those are the two I'm taking.
I was basically going to say the same thing. I mean, for me, I put, as I was taking notes, parents and life groups.
Yeah.
Just hearing other people's stories is the biggest thing. Like I can look back now on the nuggets of wisdom that I know my parents were attempting to drop in my teenage brain, and my teenage brain was like,
drop.
man, I don't need that. I know everything.
Yeah.
And now I can look back on them and be like, oh my gosh, if I had just listened to what they said, it would have spared me so much pain
Yeah.
from the experience that I had. And from life, just doing life with people too. Life groups is a great way of just hearing people's stories where you can share each other's stories. And I know that Jake's going through this thing. It's like, wow, like I can see Jake walk through that, and you can pass on wisdom from that and say like, hey, this is the stuff that we did and it worked really well, or it really didn't work well. And then I can apply that to my life when I go through that same exact thing and not have to go through it alone or go through it like I've never experienced that before, because I kind of have experienced it through the people around me.
Yeah.
And I remember doing that even like in high school, watching my brothers go through things and have arguments with my parents or have hard breakups in their relationships. And I remember taking mental notes like, they look like they're really in pain. I want to avoid that. So mental note.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So, hey, there you go.
There you go. Listen to your parents.
Little wisdom to begin with. Hey.
So one of the things that Chris had talked about that I'm really glad he addressed, because it addresses something that really bothers me about how Christians especially
I'm only
tend
like
to
3
talk
feet
about
away
this.
and I can feel the tension. And
it bothers me.
You. Yeah.
So whenever we talk about the fear of the Lord, the default that everyone always says is, oh, the fear of the Lord, to fear the Lord means you revere him. That's all it means. Yeah. God just wants reverence. There's nothing else about that. So fear is basically just reverence. The problem with that always bothers me is there is another word for reverence.
Yes.
They don't say reverence. No. They say fear. And that's echoed all throughout Proverbs. And Chris talked about that fear, there really is this actual element of fear, terror, being afraid of something when it comes to God. And so one of the questions we got is, what does that look like in practical terms, to fear the Lord? This person referenced my message the week before where I talked about my dogs. When I come home and my dogs have done something wrong, my dogs fear me, where they avoid contact, they avoid eye contact, they want nothing to do with me because they fear those coming consequences. Yeah. So in practical terms, when it comes to fearing the Lord and having that develop wisdom, what does that look like for us?
Yeah, I think it starts with just this idea of understanding the power and the authority of who God is. A lot of times it's easy to put God in our box of our own understanding.
Hey, Siri, we're not talking to you.
Siri's joining in with us today. Yeah, but it's this putting God in this box of our understanding of who he is and what he's capable of. Yeah. And when we come to the recognition that is way too small for God, that he can do what he wants to do, right? That's the whole sovereignty of God. Right. His way is right, and it's natural because whatever he does is the right thing. Right. And he's endless in power and authority. So when we recognize that level of ownership that he has over us, right, there is a healthy level of fear in that. And I think that is good. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me too of, I can't remember the specific passage where Jesus talks about it, but Jesus is talking about fear and talks about, why do you fear man who can only kill the body, right, when God can destroy your body and your soul? Yeah. And that's where that healthy level of fear comes in. Is like, God is the one who has total power, total control, total ownership, however you want to phrase it, of everything. And so recognizing that through fear of like, hey, like I recognize, we were joking before, I'm afraid of sharks in the ocean because sharks have power over me in the ocean. I am powerless against them. I respect their distance. I revere them in their domain. And so in that same way, that's how we can look at God, where he has that sense of power in this domain. And at the same time, like Chris talked about in his message, you have this fear of the Lord where you recognize and you understand that, and God invites you in and says, don't be afraid. Right. Like, I offer you love, mercy, gentleness, kindness. Like, that's the relationship that you have with God. So it is this weird balance of recognizing the power that God has. And I think Chris talked about it in his message, where the point that he had was it's recognizing and assigning the right placement of God in, I don't even know how we would phrase it, in the world, how you see him. So how that looks practically is recognizing that God has power. There's a healthy level of fear that comes with that, and that God is good. Right. And so God wants you to be in relationship with him. Right.
Yeah, I think of Isaiah, right? The prophet Isaiah sees God and is immediately just like blown away. Yep. And not only is there fear there, but there's the recognition of how unworthy he is. Yep. But yet in spite of that, and even though God is amazing and powerful and big and holy and all of these things that we're not,
Yep.
God still invites Isaiah in.
Yeah.
Right. Puts the coal on his lips. You're now mine. You're my ambassador. You're going to speak on my behalf. Like,
Yep.
man, that's incredible to know on the one hand how big and fearful we should be of God,
Yep.
but how loving he is that we're invited, and it's just perfectly meshed together.
Yeah.
It's nothing like it.
Yeah. Well, that's, I've had this thought bouncing around my head for the last week of just like, it makes such a big difference when you know that God is good.
Yeah.
Like you can think of the most powerful people in the world, the president of the United States, president of Russia, president of China. Those people have power and there's fear associated with the power that they have. But it makes such a difference when that leader is good.
Right.
And so you can look at God who has ultimate power, but God's so good. Like he wants us to know that he continually says, I'm a good God.
Right.
I'm just, jealous, merciful, kind, loving, all that. So that makes such a difference when you look at that healthy level of fear that God is also good. Makes all the difference, at least
Love
to me.
Yeah.
All right, this next question comes from Curious Carl.
Nice.
You know who you are. Was Solomon wiser than Christ? So this question comes from Chris set up a lot of great context and talked about how Solomon was gifted this wisdom from God, and God said, there will never be anyone like Solomon. Right. No one as wise as Solomon. And here comes Jesus.
Oh, man.
To mess things up. Is that a contradiction in the Bible? Did God lie?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, you just kind of wish that there was a verse in the Bible that spoke directly to this.
You know, that would be really nice.
Wouldn't it be nice?
And in fact, there is.
Oh! Look at that.
I think it's Matthew 12. Actually, I have it pulled up. Let me pull it up really quick.
Yeah, don't lead people astray here, Mark.
We're going to write it.
Get on your Google and let's
Matthew
go.
12:42.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Jesus says that he's implying about himself. Mm-hmm. He's answering this question to the scribes and the Pharisees that they're wishing to see a sign. So the scribes and Pharisees come to Jesus and say, like, hey, if you're the Son of God, like, prove it. Show us a sign. And so he talks about Jonah, and then he talks about Solomon. And says that, behold, something greater than Solomon is here. Oh. As if to imply, that's me. Boom. I am the one greater than Solomon. So it's an understandable question because
absolutely, yeah.
Jesus is, it's so hard to wrap our minds around the concept of Jesus being truly God and truly man at the same time. And Jesus is a baby and he's born. Right. And it says that he learned, like he grows in wisdom, right, in stature at some point. But yet also he's Jesus, right? And he says, "I'm greater than Solomon."
Yeah, he's the God man. There's no trump card.
So that's the answer.
Above Jesus. Yeah, yeah, and it's cool that the Bible actually addresses it and like,
right? Jesus
says, "Hey, there you go." Like,
I'm trying to make it clear for y'all.
Yeah, right. Love it when that
you're waiting for a better king. That's Solomon.
Yeah,
that's Jesus.
Ta-da!
All right, here's an interesting question. Why is wisdom portrayed as a woman? So throughout the book of Proverbs, Solomon talks about wisdom and often references wisdom as this woman, this lady who takes care of her house, who takes care of her land, who takes care and makes wise decisions. And why is it a lady?
Well, if you've ever been on the internet and seen the dumb things that guys do in packs, then you recognize that wisdom could not be a man, right?
I've seen enough fail videos to know that
right?
wisdom can't be a man.
And most of those have to do with men, so therefore wisdom cannot be masculine, right? Yeah, that's not really it at all.
That's the crystal clear answer.
Yeah, right. The language answer is quite simple, right? In Hebrew, just like in a lot of languages, Spanish, whatever, like you have masculine and feminine nouns and verbs and all that. And when it comes to wisdom, it's feminine.
Yep.
That's the really boring answer.
No, I always feel exciting. It's interesting diving into these answers because I know even I want them to be this exciting revelation, and it's like, oh, it's just language. It's just words are feminine or masculine in Hebrew, and wisdom is feminine.
Right.
And there's certainly part of that gets built up by the culture. Like we had talked earlier that we even do this. in American culture or Western culture, when we talk about like cars or boats, like, she broke down, or we got to bring her into port. It's like, well, it's a boat,
right?
It's not a girl, or a boy, it's a boat. So some of that gets built up in Proverbs and in other books of the Bible where things are referred to as masculine or feminine when they're not. They're just words or concepts or principles. But the boring answer is it's language. Yeah, it's just how it's written.
Yeah, sorry, there's nothing more real exciting about that one, but
we could invent something more exciting.
We could make something up, but that's the
a
last podcast we ever did.
That's true. So. This is why we need Chris.
Yeah,
Chris will rein us in. All right, this question comes in from Bayman Royer, friend of the show, friend of many.
The people.
Friend of the people.
Yeah.
Gosh, I got to stop. I can't go anymore. So Bayman Royer wants to know, why do we think people take Proverbs as a guarantee? So this is one of the things Chris addressed in his message as well, is that one of the things we should not do with Proverbs is take them as absolute promises. That in Proverbs, when it says do this and this will happen, that's not saying every single time you do this will happen. It's just saying in principle, this is a wise principle to follow. But why do we struggle with that? Why do people continue to take Proverbs as promises?
I think it's because we like the black and white so much, right?
Yeah.
Like we like things to be clear. We like to know if I do this, this will happen. If I invest my money, I get a return, right? Like we want that thing. We want that to be there. We want the guarantee at all times. And so I think it's just human nature to struggle with the gray.
Yep.
And so I think when we read the Proverbs, like we are looking for the right path that's going to lead us to the happiest life or the easiest life or just away from harm even.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is true most of the time. It's not true all of the time because that's not how life works.
Right.
You know?
Right. And I think some of it too is we just forget context.
Yeah.
And that's why Chris spent so much time outlining and laying out the context leading into Proverbs, why it was written, how it was written, the purpose of it, and all of that. And so when you remember the context that when you enter into Proverbs, that these are Proverbs. These are not promises. These are principles. But it's so easy to take some of these really great verses, and Chris mentioned one of them too, like train up your child, raise up your child in the way he should go, and he will never depart from it. Like that's such an encouraging thing to put on a card and give it to a new parent.
Right.
Train up your child and they'll never depart. And that parent thinks, wow, this is an amazing promise. But it's not a promise.
Right.
It's a proverb.
Right.
And so we remember that in that context, is it wise and is it a good thing to do to raise up your children to follow the Lord? Yes. And the principle behind that is that if you do that, generally children will follow along with that and follow the Lord. And that's a great thing.
Right.
But it's not a guarantee to say that if you do A, result B will always happen. You will never experience C through Z. Those situations are out. But yeah, I think we like that comfort of this is a promise. If I do this, God says that he will always do the other promised result.
Right.
It doesn't work out that way.
Can't get God in that kind of contract.
No, I've tried.
Yeah, right.
That hasn't worked out
Doesn't
well.
work out that way.
So we just got a question from Bayman Royer. This next question comes from Raymond Boyer.
Oh, wow.
Not to be confused.
They should get together sometimes.
They don't really get along.
They don't?
Yeah, I tried.
Oh, man,
yeah, they're not
Shoot.
Tight. Yeah, there's something happened there that
big rift.
It's not worth getting into.
All right.
It's a big problem. We're working through it, though. Ray Boyer asks, what is your favorite proverb? So there's 31 chapters.
Yeah.
There are many proverbs within those chapters. What you got? What's your favorite proverb?
I had to make sure I was reading the right one. You see me do that? Had it ready to go on my phone right here. I like Proverbs 4, and I like all the Proverbs, right?
Of course.
Of course.
That's the good Christian answer.
Of course.
Every proverb.
Every proverb is the best proverb. The one that applies to me and I need today, right? One that I highlighted years ago and sticks out. Proverbs 4:23. Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Guard your heart.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bible's like all over the place that it talks about that.
Yeah.
I just think it's a huge principle. You
Yeah.
know, what you care about, what you let in, what you pour in,
Yep.
you know, takes place in your heart. And,
Yep.
whatever that is, it's what's going to come out of you. It's what's going to dictate a lot for you. So guard your heart. So.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I picked 2 because I like to break the rules.
Cheater.
I know. I know. It's a problem. I'm working on it. I love Proverbs 15:1. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. I love that principle of like, if you're in that heated discussion with someone, or you're in this maybe moment where you're trying to give counsel or advice, like if you can just have that gentle answer and it just like dissipates all of the stress or all of the angst that fills the room, like, oh, that's gold when you can do that. But
you sure that verse didn't say a sarcastic answer?
I was going to say,
makes things easier?
Usually I'm the one that follows the latter half of the verse, which is that a harsh word stirs up anger.
Yeah.
I'm usually on the giving end of harsh words. So I like the principle, and I'll learn to apply it better.
We'll get there.
But my second, the one that I love that kind of speaks to this aspect of guarding your heart is, it relates, and I'll explain it. Proverbs 28:13 says, "Those who conceal their sin do not prosper, but those who confess and renounce sin find mercy." And that aspect of guarding your heart, like part of it is realizing that we're going to sin.
Yeah.
So how do I guard my heart when I know that I will sin? Is to confess that, to be open, to be vulnerable, to do that with the people in my life. That's why life groups are important. That's why good relationships with friends and family are so important, is that you need people that you can be open with. That's why it's so cool that we have this amazing relationship with God where I can just confess to God, and his answer is always, yeah, you're forgiven.
Yeah.
That's taken care of.
Yeah.
But we like to hide sin. Sin likes to make us feel like we're alone, we're isolated, we're the only one that struggles with this, we're the only one that's ever done it. And so if anyone were to ever find out, you'd be ruined. Right. And so we just hide it.
From the beginning, like that's Adam and Eve, very beginning.
It's really annoying.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody struggles with that.
Yeah.
Everybody does that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
I love
good.
that. It's a good
I like
reminder. So these next three questions I think will be quick.
Okay.
But they're specific to Proverbs. Proverbs as in the Proverbs we've been reading, which is
Gotcha.
great. So not Chris's message.
Gotcha.
So part of what we're doing is reading a proverb a day. So if you've been keeping up, you would have read, again, if we're posting this on January 4, you would have read or start reading the 4th chapter today, and you've read through. So we have questions on Proverbs, a proverb in Proverbs 1 and 2 proverbs in Proverbs 3 that I think would be interesting to discuss and talk through. So Proverbs 126 speaks to wisdom mocking us in our calamity. When we don't listen to the reprimand of wisdom, does God really mock us? What about grace? And then they put in a parentheses, not my baby, grace.
Oh.
The concept of grace.
Well, that clears it up. Good.
Which is good to clarify.
Did you read the verse?
I haven't yet. Let me pull it up.
Let's pull it up and like just read it too.
Let's
read the Bible together, Mark.
What a solid idea.
Come on.
Proverbs 126. I, and I'm assuming this is referring to wisdom, will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when terror strikes you.
Yeah.
So in looking at this, I mean, if you read through the whole chapter, my takeaway from this was wisdom mocking you. First of all, there's a difference between wisdom laughing at you and God mocking you.
Right.
Because it's not saying God is mocking you.
Correct.
But I think the concept or the principle of what Solomon is talking about here is that everyone has had that moment in their life where you make a choice and you immediately know it's the wrong choice because you can see the right choice kind of like staring you right in the face. And it feels like that right choice is laughing at you, where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I found myself in this situation, and it would have been so easy to just not do this.
Yeah.
And I think that's the principle of what's being talked about in Proverbs 126.
Yeah, I think you're dead on it. It's hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
Like that's what this proverb is basically saying when you read it. Like, it's like when you take the left-hand turn and you're like, oh shoot, I needed to go right immediately.
Right.
Immediately, right? And whether you're distracted or didn't believe it or whatever it is, it's that. It's just recognizing it's right there in your face going,
Come on, man. It's doing the Joe Biden. Come on, man.
Yeah, that's it.
If that's how it helps to picture wisdom, picture Joe Biden.
Saying,
Come on, man. All right. This next one, we're skipping Proverbs 2 because all of that's very easy to explain. Apparently, we all understand Proverbs 2 really well. Proverbs 3:9, I'm going to pull that up, speaks on giving the first fruits. Solomon talks about giving the first fruits. Is there more ways to give your first fruits than just tithing to the church, or is this what we are called to do specifically in this verse? So to recap, Proverbs 3:9 says, "Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, your vats will be filled bursting with wine." So,
should we talk about what first fruits means?
Yeah,
like when that maybe the context, right? That's
context is helpful. Yeah,
first fruits would have been as they're gathering the harvest throughout months or weeks or whatever coming into it. It's the very first thing that comes up, that they're giving it back to God and being able to say, "Hey, God, this is yours," with the idea that they're trusting God to provide every need that comes after that.
Yep.
So it's the first, the best. What you've got, you're giving immediately to God, saying, "God, this is yours," and I'm trusting that what comes behind it, you're going to provide for. Yep. You're going to take care of that, and that's kind of the concept of the first fruits. Is there anything I'm leaving out on that one?
No, I think that makes sense. Yeah. And again, understanding that this is written in the context of the Israelite understanding of tithing first fruits, that was a requirement under the law.
Right.
Tithe, give your first fruits, give your tithe to the church to support the priests so that the priests don't have to work. That was that cultural setup. So in terms of, are there more ways to do first fruits giving or tithing other than just giving to the church? Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
That I think, I'm trying to not speak too far ahead of myself, but I think the general expectation or the general encouragement, at least, especially in the New Testament, is be generous everywhere.
Right.
Be generous to your church, be generous to your family, be generous to your friends, be generous to local businesses, be generous to those that are hurting, be generous to widows and orphans. Be generous.
Yeah. Which I think is actually the New Testament. When you study that, it's actually a higher bar than the Old Testament. The Old Testament was, like your tithe, your 10%, your first fruits, all that. Yep. And the New Testament is just like, hey, don't love money.
Right.
Don't love stuff. Like, be incredibly generous. Be known for your generosity.
Right.
Just give.
Right.
Not unwise giving, but just meeting the needs of others. The bar actually got raised with Jesus.
Right.
Which is pretty much what always happens.
Yes, that's a general principle that follows Jesus. Yeah. So I think in terms of doing that to more than church, yes.
Yeah.
Be generous. That's the general call that God puts on Christians for giving is be generous.
Yeah. I mean, I think our family supports a kiddo through Compassion and World Vision.
Yep.
World Vision was back when I was in college, and Compassion was here recently since we've been at Northpointe.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of plays at that. Like that's a way to be able to do that. It's just that generous lifestyle. Those are the things that kind of pop in my mind with this.
Yep. Yeah. And the verse after talks about, if you do this, then your barns will be filled with plenty. And obviously, we know when we're giving, we're not giving out of the expectation of when I do this, God will do this.
It's not an investment plan.
Yes. So when I give generously, God will fill my barns, which means I have to have a barn. So I have to go build the barn, and then God will that's not why we give, is to have that outcome. But again, the general principle, and we know this, you can look it up statistically. Statistically, the people that are more generous are more wealthy.
Yeah.
That's just how it works out.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense,
right?
But it's how it works out. So it's a general principle. So good on you, Solomon. He knew what he was talking about.
Way to go. Way to go.
This last one, Proverbs 3:33, talks about the wicked being cursed and the righteous being blessed. Sometimes it seems like it's the other way around. Why is that so? So I'll read Proverbs 3:33. And actually, I'm going to read a few after because I think it helps explain as well. So this is Romans. Whoa, I like Romans. Proverbs 3:33 through 35. The Lord's curse is on the house of the wicked, but he blesses the dwelling of the righteous. Toward the scorners he is scornful, but to the humble he gives favor. The wise will inherit honor. The fool gets disgrace. Why does it seem like in our world, the wicked, the people that don't care about God, that don't give a hoot about being generous, why does it seem like they're the ones that are always getting ahead, getting promotions, getting paid? What's that about?
Yeah. The only thing that comes to my mind is the idea of we have our view of how things are supposed to go, how we view justice to be. But man, we don't fully understand justice the proper way. Yeah. Right. And that's what's at play, is not everybody who is in the world is just. So when the time comes for that, there's systems that are broken, there's people that are broken that are in charge of making these decisions.
Yep.
And there's ways that the reason that people cheat or step on top of other people's is because it can be successful in the short term, you know? So I think what's at play there is the idea of understanding that our sense of what is right and wrong and justice and things, punishment even, man, we think it has to be immediate and right now, and we don't always understand that we serve a timeless God,
right?
You know, and he's really in control of all things, even when people cheat and steal and hurt and step on others or whatever that might be there. If they don't get smacked in the face right away, that doesn't mean that that it's not coming in some capacity for him, or that God's lost control or lying or whatever.
Right.
It's just that his timing is perfect and his justice is better.
Yeah. Well, yeah, 100%. I think that's why I wanted to read specifically verse 35, because it helps begin to build in this perspective of the long term, where in the short term, yes, people that cheat and people that use violence to get ahead or whatever it might be, whatever the wicked do, where it seems like they're blessed. Verse 35 says, the wise inherit honor and the fools get disgrace. Or a different translation would be, the wise get glory, the fools get shame.
Yeah.
And so in the long term, what that looks like is, I mean, we get so focused on our day-to-day, or even just however long our lives might be, but in the grand scheme of God's plan for all of history and all of eternity, it's a very small sliver,
it really is,
of time where the wicked kind of run around and do their thing, but God promises that every wicked deed will be punished.
Right.
And if the wise get honor and the fools get shame, and I know what side of the coin I want to be on when that happens, when that judgment finally comes. And so having in our minds even that right perspective of what blessing looks like does blessing from God just mean I get promotion, I get ahead, I have the new car in my driveway, I've paid off my house, whatever it might be. And that can look like that.
Sure.
God does that.
Sure.
And that's really great. But is that really all that we think about when it comes to the blessing of God?
Right.
I think it would be wise to widen our scope.
Yeah, I mean, healthy relationships, healthy physically. Like, there are so many other ways that God blesses besides just finances.
Right.
And it's easy to get bogged down on, they cheated their way to the top because they have this or that. You don't always know what they don't have.
Right.
Because they got there as well.
Right.
And that's just a good thing to keep in mind. I'd much rather stay down here, not have the nice car, and have, just a really good, healthy relationship with my girls and my wife.
Right. Yep. I mean, this is not at all to pat myself on the back, but when Julie and I were early on in our marriage, I was in a job where I got paid really well and was miserable. Yeah. Miserable. And took a pretty significant pay cut to take another job, and came to realize, like, oh my gosh, I was like clinically depressed. Like, I was miserable. I was eating myself to death because I was just so depressed and didn't want to do anything. And then took a big pay cut. But man, like, being in a job where I can have lunch with my wife, actually like come home for dinner on time and have energy to talk to my wife and like build relationships. Like, man, that's such a better blessing than the job I was at before, where I got paid really, really well and hated everything about my life.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's all we have.
Proverbs.
Woo, that's it. So thanks, not Chris.
Yeah.
It's very insightful.
Not anytime.
Cool. Well, thank you all for submitting questions, for keeping the conversation going. If you have more questions about Proverbs throughout the week, be sure to submit questions. We'll try to tackle those in the next Northpointe Plus, and then we'll see you guys next week as we keep the conversation on Proverbs going.